My sister mocked my career in front of everyone. After I quietly left her baby shower, she walked into a surprise that shattered her smile. I'm 29 years old, and last month I learned that sometimes the most devastating responses come not from explosive confrontations, but from quiet actions that force people to face the consequences of their cruelty. My sister Veronica has spent years belittling my career as a firefighter, treating my choice to serve the community as somehow inferior to her corporate success. But when she publicly humiliated me at her baby shower in front of our entire family, I decided it was time she understood exactly what my inferior career actually meant. Let me give you some background on the dynamic between Veronica and me. She's 32, 3 years older, and has always been what our parents considered the successful one. After graduating from college, she landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm and worked her way up to senior management. She makes excellent money, drives a luxury car, and lives in an expensive downtown condo that she never fails to mention costs more per month than most people's salaries. I, on the other hand, chose a different path. After high school, I went straight into the fire academy and have been a firefighter for the past 11 years. I love my job, the camaraderie, the sense of purpose, the knowledge that what I do actually saves lives and protects people. The pay isn't spectacular, but it's enough to live comfortably, and I get satisfaction from my work that money can't buy. But Veronica has never understood or respected my career choice. From the moment I announced I was entering the fire academy, she's made subtle and not so subtle comments about how I was settling or not living up to my potential. She'd make jokes about me playing with hoses while she was building her career, or suggest that I was just looking for a job that didn't require much thinking. The comments got worse over the years, especially as Veronica's career advanced and her salary increased. She'd compare our lifestyles at family gatherings, pointing out her expensive purchases or exotic vacations while making sympathetic comments about how public service jobs just don't pay what they should. She framed it as concern for my financial future, but the underlying message was always clear. She thought I'd made poor life choices. Our parents, unfortunately, often reinforce this dynamic. They're proud of both of us in their own way, but they clearly see Veronica as the daughter who made it, while treating my career as noble but not particularly impressive. They brag about Veronica's promotions and bonuses to their friends, while describing my job as Thomas helps people, in a tone that suggests it's sweet but not especially noteworthy. This family dynamic reached a new level when Veronica got married 2 years ago to Bradley, a corporate lawyer who makes even more money than she does. Bradley is the kind of guy who measures everything by income and status, and he immediately joined Veronica in treating my career as charmingly blue-collar but ultimately unambitious. The condescension became unbearable at family events. Bradley would ask me about my little fire station like it was a hobby I'd eventually outgrow. Veronica would make comments about how cute it was that I was so dedicated to helping people, but wouldn't I eventually want to do something more lucrative? They discussed their real estate investments and stock portfolios while I sat there feeling like the family charity case. When Veronica announced her pregnancy 6 months ago, I was genuinely happy for her. Despite our differences, she's my sister, and I wanted to be supportive during this important time in her life. I offered to help with baby preparations, attended doctor's appointments when Bradley was traveling for work, and even helped them move some furniture when they decided to convert their spare room into a nursery. But even during her pregnancy, Veronica couldn't resist making digs about my career. She'd make comments about how I was so good with manual labor, or joke that at least one uncle would be able to teach her child practical skills since Bradley and she were both too educated for that kind of work. She'd say these things with a laugh, like they were harmless teasing, but the underlying disrespect was always there. The baby shower was supposed to be a celebration of Veronica's upcoming motherhood, but she'd been treating it more like a networking event. She'd invited colleagues from work, Bradley's professional contacts, and our extended family, about 40 people total. I'd helped with some of the setup, moving tables and hanging decorations, because that's what family does. I should have seen what was coming when Veronica started introducing me to her work friends. She'd say things like, "This is my brother Thomas. He's a firefighter, so he's our family's token blue-collar worker," or "Thomas chose the hero route instead of the money route," which we think is very admirable. The way she said "admirable" made it sound like she was praising a child for trying their best at something they weren't very good at. But the real humiliation came during the gift opening portion of the shower. Someone had given Veronica an expensive baby monitor system, and she was explaining to the group how sophisticated it was, with smartphone connectivity and health monitoring features. That's when she made the comment that changed everything. "It's amazing how technology has advanced," she said, holding up the monitor. "This thing probably has more computing power than my brother uses in his entire job." But then again, Thomas chose a career where the most complicated tool is a hose, so I guess that works out perfectly for him. The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. These were people I'd just met, colleagues and friends who now saw me as the family member who couldn't handle real work. I looked around the room and saw pity in some faces, amusement in others, and complete indifference from people who'd already written me off as unimportant. That's when I realized that Veronica had been setting me up for this moment all day. She'd introduced me as the family's simple firefighter specifically so this punchline would land effectively. She'd used me as entertainment for her sophisticated friends, and she clearly expected me to smile and take it like I always had. But this time, I didn't smile and take it. Instead, I quietly set down my plate, walked over to Veronica, and gave her a hug. "Congratulations on the baby," I said. "I hope everything goes perfectly for you." Then I left the party without another word, ignoring the confused calls from family members asking where I was going. But before I left, I made one quick phone call that would teach Veronica exactly what my inferior career was really worth. As I walked out of Veronica's baby shower, my phone was already buzzing with confused text messages from family members asking why I'd left so suddenly. I ignored them all and drove straight home, my mind racing with anger and hurt from the public humiliation I'd just endured. But underneath the pain was something else, a cold determination to show Veronica exactly what she'd been mocking all these years. The phone call I'd made as I was leaving the party was to my captain, Steve Martinez, who'd been my mentor since I'd joined the department. I'd asked him to meet me at the station because I needed to discuss something important. When I arrived, Steve was waiting in his office with a concerned expression. "What's wrong, Thomas?" he asked immediately. "You sounded upset on the phone." I explained what had happened at the baby shower, how Veronica had used my career as a punchline for her sophisticated friends. Steve listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious as I described years of condescension that had culminated in today's public mockery. "You know what bothers me most about people like your sister?" Steve said when I finished. "They have no idea what we actually do. They think we just spray water on fires and rescue cats from trees. They don't understand the training, the expertise, the life and death decisions we make every day." Steve was right. Veronica's comments about my job being simple revealed how completely ignorant she was about what firefighting actually involved. She had no idea that I was certified in hazardous materials response, technical rescue operations, and emergency medical procedures. She didn't know that I'd spent hundreds of hours in specialized training courses, that I regularly operated equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, or that I'd saved lives in situations she couldn't even imagine. "I have an idea," Steve said after thinking for a moment. "Why don't you bring your sister down here for a tour? Let her see what you actually do for a living. Sometimes people need to see something with their own eyes before they understand it." I shook my head. Veronica would never agree to that. She'd see it as beneath her, or she'd find some way to turn it into another joke about my simple little job. That's when Steve suggested something that gave me an idea, a way to show Veronica the reality of my career without giving her the chance to dismiss it or make jokes about it. "What if she didn't have a choice about seeing it?" he asked. "What if she experienced firsthand what your simple job actually looks like?" We talked for another hour, and by the time I left the station, I had a plan. It would require some coordination and perfect timing, but if it worked, Veronica would never again be able to mock my career with ignorant confidence. The first step was reaching out to my contacts in the emergency services community. After 11 years as a firefighter, I knew people in police departments, paramedic services, and emergency management throughout the region. I also knew the protocols for different types of emergency responses and how various agencies coordinated during crisis situations. The second step was more delicate. I needed to ensure that Veronica would be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to witness something that would fundamentally change her understanding of what I do for a living. This required some research into her schedule and habits, which wasn't difficult since she documented her entire life on social media. I knew that Veronica had a routine every Tuesday evening of going to an upscale yoga class downtown, followed by dinner at an expensive restaurant with her friends. She'd posted about this routine countless times, always emphasizing how sophisticated and health-conscious her lifestyle was compared to people who lived simpler lives. What Veronica didn't know was that the yoga studio she attended was located in a high-rise building that presented unique challenges for emergency response. The building was relatively new, with complex ventilation systems, multiple elevator banks, and floor layouts that required specialized knowledge to navigate during emergencies. I'd actually been to that building twice in the past year for emergency calls, once for a medical emergency on the 15th floor, and once for a small electrical fire in the basement that had triggered the building's sophisticated alarm system. Both calls had required technical expertise and equipment that would have been completely foreign to someone like Veronica, who thought my job involved nothing more complicated than spraying water. The third step of my plan required coordination with the building's management and security team. I reached out to the head of security, someone I'd worked with during previous emergency calls, and explained that I wanted to conduct a training exercise in the building. This wasn't unusual. We regularly performed drills in various commercial buildings to familiarize ourselves with their layouts and systems. What made this training exercise special was its timing and scope. I arranged for it to take place on a Tuesday evening when Veronica would be at her yoga class, and I made sure it would be comprehensive enough to demonstrate the full range of skills and equipment that firefighting actually required. The beauty of this plan was that Veronica would witness my simple job without realizing it was a demonstration specifically for her benefit. She'd see me in action during what appeared to be a routine training exercise, but the exercise would showcase exactly the kind of expertise and professionalism she'd been mocking for years. As Tuesday approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Part of me wondered if I was going too far, if this elaborate demonstration was an overreaction to years of family dynamics. But then I remembered the laughter at the baby shower, the way Veronica had used me as entertainment for her sophisticated friends, and I knew that subtle responses had never worked with my sister. Veronica had spent years dismissing my career because she'd never bothered to understand what it actually involved. She was about to get an education she'd never forget. Tuesday evening arrived with perfect weather conditions for the training exercise I'd arranged. I'd coordinated with Captain Martinez and our technical rescue team to conduct a comprehensive drill at Veronica's yoga building, complete with all the equipment and personnel that would respond to a real emergency in a high-rise structure. The scenario we'd planned was a simulated electrical fire in the building's mechanical room that had triggered the evacuation system and caused a power failure in several elevator banks. This type of emergency required exactly the kind of technical expertise and sophisticated equipment that Veronica thought was beyond my simple firefighter capabilities. I arrived at the building at 6 p.m., an hour before Veronica's yoga class was scheduled to begin. Our department's ladder truck, rescue vehicle, and command unit were already positioned outside, along with equipment that represented hundreds of thousands of dollars in specialized technology. The building's management had coordinated with us to ensure the exercise would be visible to anyone in the building, but wouldn't actually disrupt normal operations. The first phase of the exercise involved establishing command and control procedures. I took the lead role, communicating with dispatch, coordinating with building security, and directing the deployment of personnel throughout the structure. This required using radio equipment, computer systems, and electronic monitoring devices that would have surprised anyone who thought firefighting was just about spraying water. Captain Martinez watched approvingly as I managed the incident command protocol, tracking personnel locations on digital building schematics, and coordinating with utilities companies to ensure power systems were properly isolated. The building's security chief, who'd worked with me on previous real emergencies, provided commentary to the other participants about how efficiently our department operated during complex incidents. At 7 p.m., I noticed Veronica arriving for her yoga class, along with several of her usual friends who I recognized from social media posts. They walked past the fire trucks with the casual indifference of people who were accustomed to urban emergency vehicles and didn't bother to pay attention to what was actually happening. The second phase of the exercise began just as Veronica's class was getting started on the 8th floor. I led a team into the building wearing full protective gear and carrying specialized equipment for electrical emergencies and high-rise rescue operations. The elevators had been temporarily disabled as part of the drill, which meant we climbed 8 flights of stairs while carrying thermal imaging cameras, ventilation fans, and portable generators. What Veronica couldn't see from her yoga class was the sophisticated nature of the equipment we were deploying. The thermal imaging camera I was operating cost more than her car and required extensive training to interpret correctly. The portable generators we were positioning were computer-controlled systems designed to power emergency lighting and ventilation in exactly the type of high-rise environment where she was currently stretching. The third phase involved technical rescue procedures that demonstrated why firefighting required years of specialized training. We simulated evacuating injured civilians from upper floors using rope rescue systems and portable stair chairs designed for high-rise emergencies. I coordinated the operation from the incident command post we'd established in the building's lobby, directing teams throughout the structure using real-time communication systems. During this phase, several people from the yoga class came down to the lobby to see what was happening. I could see Veronica among them, still in her yoga clothes, watching with the same detached curiosity she'd shown toward everything related to my career. She had no idea that the person coordinating this complex operation was her simple firefighter brother. That's when Captain Martinez implemented the most dramatic part of our demonstration. He announced over the radio that we had a simulated victim trapped in an elevator between floors, requiring immediate technical rescue procedures. This scenario would showcase the most sophisticated aspects of our training and equipment. I responded by directing teams to positions throughout the building while coordinating with elevator maintenance technicians and building engineers. The rescue operation required using specialized tools to access the elevator shaft, rigging systems to safely extract the simulated victim, and medical equipment to assess and treat injuries. From the lobby, Veronica and the other observers could see teams moving efficiently throughout the building, communicating through advanced radio systems, and deploying equipment that clearly required extensive technical knowledge to operate. The simple job that she'd been mocking for years was revealed as a highly sophisticated operation involving multiple specialties and complex decision-making. The fourth phase of the exercise involved coordinating with other emergency services. Paramedics arrived to treat the simulated victim, police officers established traffic control and crowd management, and utility company representatives worked with our team to restore building systems safely. I served as the primary coordination point for all these agencies, demonstrating the leadership and communication skills that Veronica had never bothered to learn about. During this phase, I noticed building security talking to some of the yoga class participants, explaining what type of emergency response they were witnessing. I could see Veronica listening intently, finally paying attention to something related to firefighting for the first time in years. "That's incredibly complex," I heard one of her friends saying to building security. "I had no idea firefighters did all of this technical stuff." "Most people don't," the security chief replied. "They think it's just about putting out fires. But modern firefighters are basically engineers, paramedics, and rescue specialists all rolled into one. The training and certification requirements are extensive." As the exercise concluded, I watched Veronica and her friends walking back toward the elevators to return to their yoga class. She seemed subdued, less chatty than usual, and I could tell she was processing what she'd witnessed. But the real surprise was still coming. As Veronica's group waited for the elevator, Captain Martinez approached them with a clipboard and a friendly smile. "Excuse me, folks," he said. "We're conducting a brief survey about public awareness of emergency services. Would you mind answering a few questions about what you observed tonight?" Veronica agreed, probably thinking this was just routine community outreach. She had no idea that she was about to learn exactly who had been coordinating the sophisticated operation she'd just witnessed. Captain Martinez began his survey with standard questions about what the yoga class participants had observed during the training exercise. Veronica and her friends described seeing a well-coordinated emergency response with sophisticated equipment and professional personnel, exactly the kind of operation that had nothing in common with her stereotypes about firefighting. "It was really impressive," Veronica said to Captain Martinez. "Much more technical than I expected. The person coordinating everything seemed to really know what they were doing." "That's interesting," Captain Martinez replied. "What did you think about the incident commander's performance specifically?" Veronica considered the question seriously, clearly not realizing she was being set up for the revelation of her life. "He seemed very professional and knowledgeable," she said. "You could tell he had extensive training and experience. It was obvious he understood all the technical aspects of the operation and could manage multiple teams simultaneously." Captain Martinez nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. The incident commander tonight has 11 years of experience and dozens of specialized certifications. He's one of our most skilled firefighters, certified in technical rescue, hazardous materials response, and emergency medical procedures." "That's impressive," one of Veronica's friends said. I never realized firefighting involved so much technical expertise. Most people don't, Captain Martinez agreed. They have outdated ideas about what we do. But modern firefighting requires extensive education, ongoing training, and the ability to operate sophisticated equipment under life and death pressure. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. I'd like you to meet our incident commander, Captain Martinez said, gesturing toward me as I approached the group. This is Thomas Mitchell, one of our finest firefighters and the person who coordinated tonight's entire operation. The expression on Veronica's face went through several stages in rapid succession. First confusion, then recognition, then shock, and finally something that looked like panic. Her friends turned to look at me with new interest, clearly trying to reconcile the professional they'd just watched in action with whatever Veronica had told them about her brother's simple job. Thomas, Captain Martinez continued, these folks were just telling me how impressed they were with your performance tonight. They had no idea that firefighting involved such technical complexity and professional expertise. I looked directly at Veronica, who seemed unable to speak. Thank you, I said to the group. I'm glad you found it educational. A lot of people have misconceptions about what we do. They think it's just about spraying water on fires, but modern emergency response requires extensive technical knowledge and sophisticated equipment. One of Veronica's friends, a woman I recognized from social media posts about their expensive dinners and wine tastings, stepped forward with obvious interest. Veronica never mentioned how technical your job is, she said. She always talks about you being a firefighter, but I pictured something much more basic. The word basic hung in the air like a challenge. I could see Veronica's face turning red as she realized what her friend had just revealed about how she'd been describing my career. That's a common misconception, I replied calmly. Emergency response today involves everything from computer-controlled equipment to complex medical procedures. The thermal imaging camera I was using tonight costs more than most people's cars and requires extensive training to operate effectively. Captain Martinez was clearly enjoying this educational opportunity. Thomas here is also certified as an emergency medical technician, a technical rescue specialist, and a hazardous materials technician, he said. He's completed over 500 hours of specialized training just in the past 2 years. The incident command protocols he was managing tonight are graduate-level material. I watched Veronica's face as the full scope of her ignorance became apparent to her friends. These were people who valued expertise and professional accomplishment, and they were learning that she'd been dismissing a career that required exactly those qualities. The coordination skills alone, another friend said, managing all those teams and communicating with different agencies simultaneously. That's executive-level responsibility. Absolutely, Captain Martinez agreed. Incident commanders make life and death decisions under extreme pressure while coordinating multiple agencies and managing resources worth millions of dollars. It's one of the most demanding leadership roles in public service. That's when Veronica finally found her voice, though it was much quieter than usual. Thomas, I didn't know. I never realized your job involved all of this. I looked at my sister, this woman who'd spent years making me feel inferior for choosing public service over corporate profit, and felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. I tried to tell you about my work over the years, I said gently, but you were never interested in learning about it. You'd already decided it was simple and unimpressive, so you never bothered to ask what I actually do. The silence that followed was uncomfortable for everyone except me. Veronica's friends were looking at her with expressions that suggested they were reevaluating everything she told them about her family dynamics. Captain Martinez broke the silence by handing me a clipboard. Thomas, could you brief these folks on the equipment costs for tonight's exercise? I think they'd find it interesting. I spent the next 10 minutes explaining the value and complexity of the equipment we deployed, the years of training required to operate it safely, and the certification requirements for different aspects of emergency response. Veronica's friends asked intelligent questions and seemed genuinely impressed by the scope of knowledge and responsibility my job required. Through it all, Veronica stood quietly to the side, probably realizing that her sophisticated friends now saw her as the ignorant one, the person who'd been mocking expertise she didn't understand. As the group prepared to return to their yoga class, one of Veronica's friends turned to me with a smile. Veronica is so lucky to have such an accomplished brother, she said. You must be proud of him, she added, looking at Veronica expectantly. For the first time in years, my sister was completely speechless. 2 weeks later, Veronica called to apologize and ask if she could tour the fire station to learn more about my work. Some lessons, apparently, take public humiliation to sink in. But the most satisfying part wasn't her apology. It was knowing that she'd never again be able to make ignorant comments about my career without remembering the night she discovered what firefighting actually involves.